Welcome back to Newsday. And for the latest, we can cross to Arise correspondent Philip Crowther, who is in Kyiv. Good afternoon, Philip. Can you bring us up to speed about the diplomatic efforts that are actually now at play in order for the conflict in Ukraine to be avoided?
Yeah, we'll look no further than New York and the UN Security Council, where a meeting will be taking place later today, a meeting called by the United States, and we expect to hear there from, well, all participants in this crisis, essentially the first time they will all be sat around a table. Now, what you can expect from this UN Security Council meeting is to hear from a UN official briefing everybody first, followed by Ukraine first, of course. They'll be invited because this is a meeting about them, but then also the United States and Russia and all other members of the 15-member Security Council will get to speak. Also look out for Russia, of course, a participant, the main participant in this crisis, of course, trying to stop this meeting from actually happening. Though Russia would have to get 9 out of 15 Security Council members on board for that actually to take place. There won't be any resolution coming out of this meeting, but again, it will be interesting to hear from everybody involved here, essentially. Now, on the diplomatic track, also London will be particularly important over the next few days. Boris Johnson is expected to, according to the Russian Foreign Ministry, to have a phone call with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, later today. That is, of course, absolutely crucial. Vladimir Putin is the person who everybody here in Ukraine and we also want to hear from. Because since the United States and NATO gave their reaction to Russia's demands on the borders with Ukraine, specifically also asking for NATO to block any membership of Ukraine in NATO in the future, since those demands were rejected by the United States and NATO, we still have not heard from the Russian president directly. Boris Johnson also will be coming to the region, to Eastern Europe, says number 10 Downing Street. It wouldn't be a surprise if he comes here to Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, at some point at the beginning of this week also. One more phone call that will be very important that was already planned. That is likely to be this Tuesday, says the Russian TASS news agency, between the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. So a lot happening on the diplomatic front. Don't expect anything all too concrete to come from that UN Security Council meeting, but it's still going to be important to see diplomacy in action and to see how big the differences of opinion truly are between Ukraine and Russia, of course, but also between the United States and Russia.
So, Philip, what's happening in Ukraine where you are? What's the latest in Kyiv at the moment?
Well, look, this is a very calm capital city. The calm before the storm may be all sorts of speculation, of course, here as to whether there's going to be a Russian incursion or attack, whether the capital city itself could be targeted, and how, maybe directly by the Russian military, maybe through more provocative acts, if you will, cyber attacks. That is one of the possibilities. Now, the front line in the Donbass region, in the eastern part of Ukraine, is a long way away from here. It basically takes a whole day to get to that front line. But still, there are worries here, of course. Maybe more so because the border with Belarus, where Russian troops have also been amassing over the last few weeks, that is a lot closer, around 100 miles away from here, meaning that a potential incursion from Russia would be that little bit easier from there toward the capital city of Ukraine. Again, there's a lot of speculation here, of course, as to what exactly could happen and when, and there is a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of tension here. There are bomb shelters here that have been here since Soviet times, and people are trying to find out slowly but surely where their closest one is, just in case something happens here in the capital city of Kyiv. At the same time, there are defense forces made up of civilians who are training right now here on the outskirts of Kyiv to be ready, just in case. These are civilians who would be fighting potentially alongside the actual members of the Ukrainian military. And then some news coming in here from the Ukrainian police earlier today. They say that they've arrested quite a lot of people in their hundreds who are planning to riot in several Ukrainian cities. It is believed that that might be part of those destabilization efforts, whether organized by Russia or not. We simply do not know, but it all adds to that little bit of tension, of course, that one would feel in a capital city when the country is essentially surrounded by Russian troops.
And Philip, the messages coming in from Ukraine's President Zelensky are somewhat tamer than those of the US and other Western leaders. What's going on here?
Yeah, you're right to mention this. There seems to be a little bit of a rift there between the Ukraine and the United States and maybe other Western countries as well, because the message from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been pretty clear over the last few days. He says there is no need to panic. He wants people to remain calm around Ukraine and the whole of the country because there is nothing happening yet, because there are a lot of Russian troops on the borders with Ukraine, over 100,000, but they are not making any moves into Ukraine at this moment. There are training exercises planned with Belarus, for example, on the border with Ukraine. So that's something that will happen over the next few weeks and that will lead to a little bit more tension as well. But the really stark warnings have not come from Ukraine. They have come from the United States and the West, especially US President Joe Biden has mentioned several times that he believes that an incursion of some sort could essentially be imminent. We heard from him that he believed it would be in February. Well, that's where we are now. That could happen this month. The Ukrainian authorities don't really believe that an attack is imminent. Of course, nobody knows for sure, because who's the person who's going to decide what exactly is going to happen? Well, that's one person only. That's Russian President Vladimir Putin. Again, it's really worth noting that we have not heard from him directly for days now, ever since the United States and NATO reacted to those Russian demands that Ukraine never be allowed into NATO. Other demands also that NATO weapons and NATO troops be removed from both the border with Ukraine, but also from other Eastern European nations. All of those demands that the United States and NATO will absolutely not listen to. So that's the state of play here, essentially. Calls for calm from Ukraine, but also calls for more help, for more material, for more support, military support, that is, from NATO and Western countries. So all sorts of messages, essentially, on this front.
Well, we will wait and see. Thank you so much, Arise correspondent Philip Crowther.